Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, The Story Ain't Over. So today I wanted to bring you a recommendation video of 14 books that feature queer POC main characters. So I've seen a lot of like Pride Month book rec videos go around, but I find that a lot of them always lack a lot of like POC main characters who are also queer in some way. And so I wanted to do a whole video just recommending queer POC stories. So there's quite a bit of variety in these books, but I will say that most of them are sapphic in nature because I feel like that's just what I gravitate towards, but I try to include some other ones towards the end of books that I haven't read that have different rep as well. So I hope you'll enjoy this video, and let's get into first the books that I have read and loved that you should definitely pick up. Alright, so the first book that I have is a super recent fave of mine, and that is Honey and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagirdar. Some of you may have seen the live show that I did with Adiba for her launch week, and we were recommending books in media where we have seen like South Asian rep, like positive South Asian rep, and it was just so fun and just heartwarming to do that. Basically, this book is a really cute sapphic romance, and it features two different main characters who are both Bengali, so Honey and Issue, and basically the story begins with Honey's friends invalidating her experience as being bisexual. She sort of comes out to them in a way that she didn't really expect to, and they completely do not believe her. They think she's just going through a phase, or that, you know, it's not a real thing. And so in order to convince them of her sexuality, she decides to fake date Issue and sort of lie that she's dating Issue. And so she has to get Issue on board, and Issue is also dealing with her own personal stuff. Her parents have recently been really disappointed in her older sister, who has not really lived up to the expectations that they had for her, and so Issue feels like she needs to now step up her game and make it seem like she is still on the path for success, and so she wants to find a way to become head girl. And when Honey comes to her with this proposition for fake dating, she realizes that Honey's popularity might be the way to getting head girl. So she is very frank about this, and they both talk about this, and they decide they're gonna fake date to prove Honey's bisexuality and help Issue get head girl. Overall, it was like super cute. There are just so many like wonderful moments between these two. They're also just very different characters, so you are seeing their personalities sort of mesh and clash. And one of the things that I really loved about this book was that both the characters have sort of different identities. Issue identifies as queer. It's not really said in the book, but the author has mentioned it on social media. And then Honey identifies as bisexual, but their parents have very different kind of looks at their sexuality. So Honey's parents are very accepting and sort of very liberal Muslim parents, and you know, she has come out to them much prior to this book happening, and so it's a very like loving relationship there, whereas Issue's parents are a lot more conservative, and Issue doesn't really have an intention of coming out in this book. And I don't feel like this is really a spoiler, but like Issue never comes out in the book, and I think that that's something really validating for anyone who is unable to come out or isn't ready yet. And so in that way, I just really loved like the different perspectives of these two characters who are both Bengali being queer. Alright, the next book is also one by Adiba Jagirdar, and that is her debut novel, The Henna Wars. So this one also features a sapphic romance, but this time the main character Nishat is the lesbian, and she's also Bangladeshi. She is living in Ireland like Honey and Issue. This book is a little bit different in the sense that it is a coming out story. Nishat comes out to her parents at the very beginning of the book. It does involve some involuntary outing later on in the book, so just like be aware of that. But the interesting thing about this one is that these two characters are in a business class together, and they end up creating rival businesses for this business class and end up competing in this sort of like business competition. And it involves like some cultural appropriation as well, because the love interest Flavia, who is Brazilian, is using henna for her business, even though it's not her background. And so there's that exploration and discussion, but there's also like this kind of cute romance that blooms between them. I will say that this one features like a lot of frustrating like antagonists. Same with Honey and Issue, but I feel like I was more frustrated with the antagonists in this one, so just be aware of that. Alright, the next book that I have is a fantasy, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. So this is a soft sapphic romance within a Asian-inspired fantasy world, and this is quite a brutal world, I would say. It involves different casts, and the kind of main storyline is that these 8 different girls from the lowest caste, the paper caste, are sort of taken each year to become like the servants slash like concubines of the Demon King. And so our main character, Lei, is from the paper caste, the lowest caste, but she has like these unique eyes. And so originally she wasn't supposed to be one of these girls who goes to become the servants, but she is sort of found by the king and brought to the palace to join the other paper girls. And so this book has a lot of triggers for like sexual assault and rape, so I would just be careful of that, but it does feature one of the softest and sweetest sapphic romances ever. So Lei and one of the other paper girls, Ren, end up falling for each other even though it's completely forbidden and you know they shouldn't be, and they're only meant for the king. So it becomes this sort of like forbidden romance that they keep secret between them, and it's just so freaking sweet. And I loved the kind of mix of their personalities because Lei is sort of a soft person, but Ren is more of a outwardly stoic person, but she's like really soft when she's with Lei, so that was really cute. And it is also a story of like these women, you know, rising up against this horrible king and person and caste system, and it was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed it as a fantasy but also a sapphic romance and also like sort of a feminist story. So yeah, really, really appreciated this and really excited to see where it goes in the next books. There are 2 more books. I haven't had the chance to pick them up yet, but I definitely want to read more, and I look forward to getting more moments between Lei and Ren. Alright, the next book is one that I recommend all the time because it's one of my all-time favorite books, especially because of the representation of a queer POC experience. So that book is The Love and Lies of Roxanna Ali by Sabina Khan. I read this book I think a couple years ago and absolutely fell in love with it. It is definitely a very harrowing book, and I want to put out the content warning that there are a lot of triggering things that happen in this book for a queer person. But basically this follows our main character, Roxanna Ali, who is a Bangladeshi Muslim American girl who has very conservative parents. And when her mother sort of walks in on her kissing her girlfriend Ariana, things sort of blow up, and her parents whisk her off to Bangladesh to sort of pretend that Roxanna isn't a lesbian and that they can sort of make this go away. And she's sort of thrust into this arranged marriage situation because they want her to just like fit this exact mold that they have of her. And so this is the story of like Roxanna trying to deal with her parents' idea of her and the way that they're denying her sexuality, but also her trying to, you know, understand them and their perspective. And she really loves her family, and I think that's what I loved about this book. It's the way that it shows the duality between her loving her family and also them not accepting her and trying to find the in-between there. And it really represents like how tough it can be for some queer POC, which I really, really loved seeing that representation. And it's also really amazing because it's a very nuanced look. In Bangladesh, Roxanna actually encounters a lot of people who do support her, who do recognize her sexuality, who do want her to be herself and to be happy. And so although she doesn't get that acceptance from her parents at first, she's seeing that in other people in her life. Regardless, it is like a very painful process that gets her towards the end. But yeah, I just think that like seeing this process and seeing this representation was just so important. All right, the next book that I want to talk about is one that I read very, very recently and really enjoyed, and that is Zara Hossain Is Here by Sabina Khan. So this is Sabina Khan's next book after The Love and Lies of Roxanna Ali, and I really enjoyed this one because it is a slightly different look at a queer POC experience, but it's one that's not completely focused on her queerness. So in this book, Zara Hossain is a Pakistani immigrant. Her family and she immigrated from Pakistan when she was really young, and so they've been waiting for a green card basically her whole life. So this has a really deep look at the US immigration system and, you know, involves a lot of Islamophobia, and that is sort of like the main conflict in the book. But another thing that I loved about this book was that Zara's parents are very accepting of her sexuality. So in the book, there's actually like a sapphic romance. She meets this girl named Chloe at her school who has very religious parents and who are not accepting of her sexuality. And so there's like that sort of juxtaposition of like Chloe's parents, who are white, I believe, who are not accepting, whereas Zara's parents are actually quite liberal and accepting. But you do also see like people from Zara's extended family who are not as accepting, and there's like even like this aunt who like drops this really like mean comment, and her parents basically defend her, and it's like really awesome just seeing how her parents defend her to this like random auntie. So in that way I like really like this because it was like more of a positive representation of a, you know, queer POC character and like a family dynamic. But I also feel like the more harrowing ones are also very, very important. This is also a super short read, and I highly recommend the audiobook as well because I thought it was fantastic. Alright, the next book is one that I don't have with me, but that is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. So this is a book that I read I think last year and absolutely loved. It is such a cute book, and and it features a really cute sapphic romance. But basically it follows our main character, Liz Lighty, who is a black girl living in this very sort of conservative small town in Campbell, Indiana. And she comes from a pretty poor family, so she's been trying to find ways to raise money to go to her dream college. And so what she ends up doing is entering the prom queen contest. And so in like her small town, apparently there's like this huge prize, like cash prize for the people who win prom king and queen. And so she enters to become prom queen, but obviously her small town is very conservative, and so they don't even let same-sex couples like go together. And so Liz is sort of fighting against the conservative nature of her town and of her school, and she's also not completely out at her school either, so there's also that aspect. But she's also falling for a girl at her school named Mac, and there was some really cute vibes between the two of them. So yeah, it was like overall a really cute sapphic romance, and I loved Liz as a main character. She was just a very endearing person, and the romance was just so adorable. Alright, the next book is one that I'm actually currently reading right now and absolutely loving, and I'm actually doing a book club discussion for it on June 30th at I think 7 p.m. ET. I'll leave the link down below for the Eventbrite if you want to join for the discussion, but that is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. So this follows our closeted, broke, jobless, zillennial, lesbian main character named Jasmine, and Jasmine has been like going through a lot of things recently, hasn't been able to find a job after leaving college, and her parents are sort of going through a financial crisis, so they all decide that they're gonna move back to Malaysia, a place that Jasmine hasn't been to since she was a toddler. But amid all of this, Jasmine is hearing voices in her head, and she soon finds out that the voice in her head is actually her grandmother, who passed away on her mother's side and who happened to be a spirit medium in life and was the avatar of this mysterious deity called the Blackwater Sister. And so when her grandmother in her head hears about this business magnate who is really big in Malaysia now, it turns out that that business magnate is someone that the deity has some beef with. And so Jasmine's grandmother wants to settle the score with this business magnate and is going to use Jasmine to get what she wants, including sort of using Jasmine's body when she's unconscious and threatening to out her and basically forcing her to commit some felonies along the way. And this seems super interesting so far, and I'm really loving the dynamic between the grandmother and Jasmine, but it's also sort of really relatable because she is in that zillennial age between being a millennial and a Gen Z person. So she's like that post-college age, and it's just like a lot of fun reading about that. And in the book, Jasmine is also in a sapphic relationship with a girl named Sharanya, who is Indian, I believe, and she is currently in Singapore for her job, and Jasmine is trying to decide if she wants to, you know, leave her family and go to Singapore to live with Sharanya and find a job there, or if she wants to find a job in Malaysia and sort of stay with her parents and figure that out. And so there's also that decision that she has to make. I'm not too far in, so I don't know how the relationship sort of progresses, but regardless, I'm really enjoying the book and really enjoying Jasmine's perspective. Alright, the next book that I want to recommend is one I've talked about a bunch of times, and that is I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. So this features our main character Sky Shin, who is a fat bisexual Korean American girl, and she is the type of person who just wants to be unapologetically herself, and so she ends up entering a K-pop competition that comes to her hometown, I think in LA, and she's doing this against the wishes of her mother, who thinks she's too fat to, you know, be a singer, to be famous, to be a K-pop star, and also just the general opinion of the K-pop industry of valuing thin girls. This book doesn't really focus on Sky's sexuality as much as her being fat and like her experience with that part of her identity, but it does on page talk about her being bisexual. I don't believe she's out to her family yet, but it is a part of her identity, and I like that it was a representation of a bisexual main character who wasn't in a same-sex relationship. So yeah, there is like a male love interest that comes in later in the book, and it's actually a really cute romance, and I just loved like Sky as a character. She is very like accepting of who she is even when other people aren't, and I feel like that was just so endearing and also just so inspiring as well. So yeah, for that reason I really love this book, and it also features a really complicated relationship with her and her mother as well, and so seeing that represented was really cool as well. Alright, the next book that I want to talk about is also similar to I'll Be the One because it features a bisexual main character, and that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is probably my favorite Talia Hibbert book because the romance is just so freaking good, but I also personally really like Danny's character in this book. So Danny is a black bisexual main character. She is doing a PhD in the book, and she's also just like the type of person who is unapologetically herself. She doesn't take people's shit, and she's also the type of character who is very focused on her like academic success and her career and doesn't really care about romance or has felt that it's not going to ever end that well. And so she's always looking for partners for companionship or for the sex, but not really the romance. And so at the beginning of the book, she's actually recently just broken up with another woman. They were in a relationship, but Danny was mostly emotionally unavailable, and so that's why they broke up. And so this book actually ends up being a story where she fake dates this other guy named Zafir for this whole situation that I won't really get into, but I did really like the representation of like her having been in a relationship with the same sex and then being in a separate relationship with a man, and just her being her unapologetic bisexual self, and she was just awesome. I loved her as a character, and she's also very like quirky as well, and the romance in here is absolutely wonderful, so highly recommend for that reason as well. But yeah, mainly for Danny as a character. Alright, now we're getting into books that I haven't read but that also feature queer POC main characters. So I really want to talk about all these because they all just seem super exciting, and I feel like a lot of you will probably enjoy them, and also a lot of people have told me that each of these is fantastic. So the first one that I want to mention is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. So many people have told me this book is amazing and I really need to get on reading this, but this features our main character Felix, who is a black queer transgender main character, and Felix's last name is Love, but ironically he has never been in love. And the conflict in this book actually starts with this anonymous person sending Felix transphobic messages and sort of like posting pictures of him before his transition and using his dead name and all that kind of horrible stuff. And so this is the story of like Felix trying to find out who this person is and take revenge, but he also ends up in this like strange catfish situation, love triangle from what I can tell from the description. But what I've heard from many of my friends and many of you who have read it is that it is a really beautiful story of like accepting yourself and just being unapologetically trans, and I just love that. So yeah, I really want to pick it up soon, and let me know if any of you have read it. Alright, the next book that I want to talk about is actually a sequel to a book that I've read before, and that is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. And this features a Persian Iranian main character who has depression, so there's a lot of depression rep in this book, and he's going to Iran for the first time in this book and kind of reconnecting with one side of his family. And this book particularly doesn't have any clear queer rep, but there is a sense that Darius may have a crush on the friend that he makes in this book, and we kind of get the sense that Darius might be queer, but it's never really confirmed. But in the second book, Darius the Great Deserves Better, which I'm hoping to read very, very soon, it actually explicitly mentions that Darius is gay and that he is in a relationship with another guy. And he's sort of like, you know, getting into a better groove after his trip to Iran and accepting who he is as a half Persian American kid, and also just like accepting his sexuality. But there's this like other aspect of him starting to realize that his relationship that he's currently in might not be what he thought it was, and that there might be this other guy to school that, you know, he may have stronger feelings for. So I'm really excited to pick up Darius the Great Deserves Better because I think it's going to be super cute, and I feel like some of my friends who have read it said that they really enjoyed it as well, so I'm excited to pick it up. Alright, the next book that I'm hoping to pick up very soon is one that actually just recently came out, and that is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. And I actually own Tasha Suri's previous books, but I don't think either of them featured a like queer romance at all, but this one definitely features a sapphic romance, one that I've heard is really awesome. So basically this book follows two different main characters, Malini and Priya. So Malini is the princess and younger sister to this dictator, and he has put her in isolation and sort of imprisoned her in this ancient temple. And then our other main character, Priya, is one of many maidservants who is tasked with cleaning Malini's chamber every night in the temple. And so when Malini accidentally bears witness to Priya's true nature, which is all the description would say, and I have no idea what this means, but I think it's something magical, their destinies sort of get intertwined. And so Malini is trying to overthrow her brother, and it seems like Priya has some sort of backstory with her family and she's trying to find them. So the two of them are sort of working together and also falling in love, and I'm super excited for this, not only for the sapphic relationship but also for the Indian inspired fantasy world, so I cannot wait to pick this up. Alright, the next book is one that I feel like a lot of people don't know is queer, but it actually is, and that book is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Yamide, and this book is basically Gossip Girl with black main leads that explores institutionalized racism. So it's been pitched as like Get Out meets Gossip Girl in like this private academy, and it follows our two different main characters. So Chiamaka, who is a biracial Italian and Nigerian bisexual girl, and then we also have Devin, who is black and gay, and so the two of them have recently become, I believe, prefects at their school, at their like private academy, and I believe they are friends in the book, but things start to go wrong when this anonymous person named Ace starts texting secrets about the two of them to the entire school. And so it's a story of these two trying to figure out who Ace is and what's sort of going on and sort of the racial implications of all of this, and I am very excited to read this. I've heard so many amazing things about this, and I love that both of them are queer, so I think it's gonna be fantastic and I cannot wait to pick it up. Let me know if any of you have read it and what you thought of it, because I really want to hear more. Alright, and the final book that I want to talk about, and the last one that I want to pick up soon, is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nhi Vo. So this is actually a Great Gatsby retelling and follows the character of Jordan Baker. So in this version, Jordan Baker is queer, Asian, specifically Vietnamese, and she's also adopted. And so she has had all of the wealth and opportunity that her, adoptee parents have given her, but because she is Asian in predominantly white spaces, she has been treated as this exotic attraction. But the even more interesting thing about this is that it also features a little bit of fantasy elements in this retelling of Great Gatsby, including infernal pacts, dazzling illusions, lost ghosts, and elemental mysteries. So all of that has got me super excited, and I like that this is going to be involving some fantasy elements into this like real world story. But I also love that we're getting this really interesting look at the story from Jordan's perspective, but also having her be queer and Asian, and I'm just like living for all of this. So yeah, very, very excited for this one. Alright, but those are all of the books that I wanted to talk about today, both books that I've read and books that I'm hoping to read that feature queer POC main characters, people of color. Although I'm making this video in June during Pride Month, these are definitely books that you can pick up any time of the year, all year around. I feel like you should always be making the effort to read books featuring queer characters or people of color, and especially that intersection, because it's a very different experience being queer POC and, having that intersection of experience. So yeah, I really wanted to recommend these books because I love so many of them and I'm so excited for so many more. I would love to hear from you guys which of these books you read and which ones you love, and which of them that you are hoping to read and pick up soon. And I would also love to hear your recommendations for books that feature queer POC main characters. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out my Instagram and Twitter and Goodreads in the description down below, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!